how regenerative agriculture makes it rain. The more plants there are, the more it's going to rain. What did you think? Some places just got lucky about where they were placed, and that determined how much rain they got? If that were true, then why is the desert spreading? Why isn't the rainforest simply recovering? And why isn't erosion just dumping all those nutrient-rich soils in a neighboring field where things can continue to grow with or without your help? Because the health within the soil attracts rain, that's why. The more of the microbiome we take away, the less it's gonna rain. Let's break this down as simply as possible and tell you why regenerative farming is going to fight drought. It's all about ice formation up in the clouds. In order to trigger precipitation, without which rain can't happen, the formation of ice particles is necessary. And no, we're not talking about snow or hail. Way up there, things are a lot more turbulent and colder than they are down here. And those little ice particles are the reason we get clouds, rain, thunder, and everything else that happens up there. For many years, we thought that minute traces of minerals were what formed the base structure of these icicles. But it turns out that there are more living organisms up there in the clouds than there are minerals. And it's the fungi, algae, and bacteriums that uphold the various ice formations that hold all of that water in place up there. And where do you think all of those microorganisms come from? They don't breed up there, where there's no food for them, that's for sure. Nope, the same organisms needed to make clouds are currently multiplying under your feet, right in the ground where they should be. But through evaporation, a few of them hitch a ride into the atmosphere, beginning the systematic retention and eventual release of water up in the sky. And what have we been doing for the past century or so? We've been doing our best to kill anything and everything living in the soil for fear that they'll damage our precious crops. Even though 90% of what we're killing with our pesticides aren't harmful to plant life at all, we still insist on killing them just to get to that last 10%. And the ironic thing here is that if we just left it all as it should be, the good 90% mostly takes care of the bad 10% for us. But no, spray, spray, spray we must. And in return for killing off those valuable microorganisms, we've disrupted everything. The soil, the forest, the field, the air, and the sky up above. This isn't stopping the sun from sucking up moisture. Evaporation continues like it normally does. But without the structural microbes needed to keep the cloud formation stable, there's no longer the even distribution of rainwater. Nope, now we get droughts for most of the year. And when we finally do get rain, it's a massive dump of tons of water all at once. This is a huge problem. You go from drought to flooding conditions in minutes, and a few days later, all that water is gone, leaving brand new grooves in the earth that harbor more erosion than any soil can handle in a single downpour. And the water you did get? Well, that got sucked up by bone-dry sand that hasn't seen a drop of moisture in months. And the rest is washed away into bodies of water that you don't have access to anyway. But what does this have to do with you? 5 billion hectares of land is currently used for agriculture. That's 38% of the entire planet, and that's just an estimate based on officially registered farms. Those numbers don't include homesteads, your backyard, or ancestral land that's been farmed by hundreds of generations of people all across Africa and South America. Half the livable space on this planet has something edible growing on it with the targeted intention of feeding someone. That's 50% of the planet's microbiome dead, or being actively eradicated as we speak. And we wonder why half of the Americas is so dry that wildfires are raging across the land, and deserts are expanding. Most of Africa is so eroded that there's barely enough nutrients in the soil to grow a shrub, and grasslands that used to feed billions of migrating animals are standing empty, and the bucks and buffaloes are dying of starvation. Eastern Europe is getting more flooding than it's had in half a century. Entire bridges are being swept away right now. Yet Western Europe's groundwater storages aren't being replenished like they used to be, even with all of the rains. All right, we know that we sound like doomsday prophets screaming about the end times. But it's not an exaggeration. The world's weather has gone topsy-turvy for many reasons, land management being one of them. Pesticides have a lot to do with it. So will your small acreage change the world on its own? Probably not. But you and your neighbor, and the next guy down the road, and another guy a few states over. Well, when you tally up all of the people who are putting their energy into farming regeneratively, and you start adding every single acre, one by one, it starts to look like a lot more than just your backyard. The truth of the matter is that microorganisms have a greater impact on the world than just breaking down organic matter. It affects how the soil holds on to moisture. Without them, there aren't any nutrients in the ground for your crops to grow. It stabilizes the amount of carbon in the air. They protect plants from disease and pests. And yes, it has a direct effect on rain. There are a few studies that are currently being applied down in South America, and the regenerative ranches, situated in the middle of the desert, are already getting 28% more rain than their direct neighbors in the same area. So just because the microbes on your property are going up in the air, doesn't mean that they're going to go across to another continent and you won't get any payback for giving up the sprays. And it's not just about getting more inches of rain. They're getting 14% more morning dew than ranches that are just 20 miles away. And most shocking of all, the soil is retaining 300% more of the moisture than the rest. Grassland mostly makes use of its stored water, not what it's getting from above. Farmers in the Chihuahua district of Mexico can keep 5 times the amount of cattle on an acre than their neighbors, and they stopped throwing down seeds by the 3rd year of the study, simply because they didn't need to anymore. The grass was coming back all on its own, without any of their help. So no, it's not just us nature-loving hippies here at the office telling you that regenerative agriculture is the way forward. The numbers and the dollars agree. The more you spray, the more you'll pay. And we mean that literally. If there aren't microorganisms, there's nothing to break down nutrients, so you need to buy fertilizer. No fungi and bacteria, and there's less rain, so you need to pay for municipal water. No organisms to combat disease. Well, now you have to pay even more to treat the disease and eradicate the threat. With regenerative agriculture, your life will be easier, cheaper, and your yields bigger. The whole point of regenerative agriculture is to preserve the soil, the organisms that live inside it, the plants that grow above it, and the animals that graze on top of it. It all starts with the soil, and from there it goes into the plants, into the animals, into us, and into the air. There's no wrong way to farm regeneratively, as long as you're doing what you feasibly can on your property to avoid pesticides. Honestly, you're probably doing more than most. Throw away the can, and begin to reap what you sow. So start today. Put more life into the soil, so that you can get more droplets from the sky. Did you know about the enormous impact that your soil has on rainwater? And what about the other effects of microbiomes? This enormous snowball effect that starts with the soil is endless, and we'll get into every aspect of how regenerative agriculture can positively affect the world. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of it. See you next time. Cheers!